Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the opportunity to present key findings and the implications we see for broadband service providers from our recent analysis of broadband usage data. In the first quarter of this year, as vaccinations stepped up, lockdowns eased, and the workplace slowly welcomed back its staff, albeit in hybrid fashion in some cases, the heights of usage, both downstream and upstream, began to recede. In fact, seasonal patterns of usage have started to reemerge, which brings a greater opportunity for network forecasting and infrastructure planning. However, with work location shifting continuing and a slow establishment of a new normal, broadband usage continues at an unprecedented level. And whether it's work from home, remote learning, or just streaming entertainment, subscribers' usage has changed forever. However, many of them are on the same plan and facing quality of service issues, or will be. How can broadband providers pinpoint these users? How can this elevated usage, now an ongoing reality, be monetized for greater ARPU and greater value of their networks? During this webinar, we'll take a look at last quarter's usage, see how it compares quarter after quarter, how usage-based billing continues to make a difference in usage patterns, the implications of usage and speed insights that we've gleaned, and then, in response to feedback we've received from past OVBI deep dives, we're going to go beyond the data and do a spotlight on how providers can take a closer look at the same data we're seeing and turn that into a monetization opportunity. Welcome. I'm Larry Siegel, and I'll be serving as your host on today's webinar. I'm going to talk a bit about our role in developing this groundbreaking report, and then turn it over to our CEO and founder, Mark Trudeau, who'll take us on a deep dive into the key findings and their implications for broadband operators, especially on how they can take the same views we have on data usage and leverage that for increasing ARPU. As we go through our key findings, if you have any questions, please submit your questions here on Zoom in the Q&A area. If we don't respond during this session, we'll follow up with you. Just a bit about OpenVault. For over 10 years, we focused exclusively on helping broadband providers manage their networks more effectively and proactively, improving revenues and profit margins, and provide subscribers with a higher quality of experience. Everything starts with the analytics of actual usage and network data, which includes a vast amount of our built-in deep domain expertise. These results then drive a broad set of actionable and automated solutions, which are 100% cloud-based, easy and quick to deploy, and which generate industry-leading ROIs. We unlock the power of your data. Our tools gather broadband data generated by 150 plus broadband providers in North America, Latin America, and Europe. And once within our platform, we create a holistic pool of data across millions of subscriber data usage records, into which we execute a series of powerful analytic queries ranging from overall usage, tiered usage, plan and plan migrations, and geographic characteristics. These then yield insights which have implications for broadband providers. We share these insights and their implications for providers with our quarterly OpenVault Broadband Insights Report advisories, or OVBIs. Now, to get into what we found in the first quarter and how that compares to year-over-year visibility and quarter-over-quarter, here is OpenVault founder and CEO, Mark Trudeau.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. Yeah, we're just going to dive right in. We're going to throw a lot of numbers at you here today, as usual, but at the same time, we'll try and put some context around these things as we present them. But just starting out with average usage per household, we have seen that it grew 15% year over year. Let's remember that the pandemic, started in obviously February, March of last year. Lockdowns started occurring, et cetera. So we started seeing pretty significant increases in usage by the end of the first quarter of 2020. And despite that increase, we continue to see growth year over year as we look at the end of Q1 2021. So we'll get into those details here in a minute. Another area that those of you that have participated in these webinars before have seen is we like to focus on power usage. And while power usage is still on the rise, it certainly has leveled off. And we're going to see that while year over year it's still growing significantly, it actually has come down slightly from what we saw at the end of 2020. And that holds true for extreme power users as well. Subscribers continue to select faster speeds, and we know operators are out there promoting gig service speeds in many markets, and we continue to see growth in those areas, although again growth has slowed down a bit from what we saw last year, but we will certainly provide the details of that as well as consumers continue to seek faster and faster speeds. Usage-based billing versus flat rate billing. In other words, those operators that have quotas on their plans or usage limits, and as compared to those that have the all-you-can-eat unlimited plans, continue to show that it impacts usage behavior. And we're going to get into the details of that, but this is a trend that we've been tracking for quite some time, and we're actually seeing it now have an even greater impact as usage-based billing providers who relaxed their quotas for a good part of the pandemic have now re-implemented those quotas. That seems to have a pretty significant impact on usage, particularly at the power user levels. One thing that we obviously during 2020, all bets were off really when it came to what was happening with usage. Former seasonality that we had seen from quarter to quarter, month to month, quarter to quarter had we couldn't really pay attention to previous seasonality because usage was just crazy in 2020. We are now starting to see things return a bit. That's what the trends are showing us, that while we're at higher levels of usage, we are starting to see the seasonality that we had seen in previous years. One of the things that we started a few quarters ago is taking a look at what the average broadband household looks like in terms of their upstream and downstream usage. How many devices do they have? How many streaming services do they have? And we've been able to pull some of that data from some other sources, which we'll share with you here today as well.
Thank you, Mark. And we'd like to take a pause here right now, get you excited, get you interested, and we're going to share a poll with you. And here's the poll. Based on the apparent return to seasonal usage trends, though at higher than pre-pandemic levels, how would you rate your concern about higher usage's impact on your network performance? Please go ahead and vote. We'll give it just a few moments here. Just jump right in. Are you concerned? Are you not at all concerned? Are you very concerned? And as you can see, some people are not very concerned, some are neutral, and about the same amount are somewhat concerned. A few of you are very concerned. A couple aren't concerned at all. So obviously, there are some considerations that you'll be having. And as we talked about, while seasonal patterns seem to have returned, the impact is still profound. So those of you who weren't concerned, perhaps you might be. So let's turn it over back to Mark and get to our next section, deep dive.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So again, as we talked about up front, we're seeing a continued increase in growth and usage. So we're running at about 15% higher than what we were at the end of the first quarter 2020. And again, that was really the first quarter that we started to see the impacts of the pandemic. So the fact that we're higher is pretty significant information, I think. Now, if you look over on the right, we are a little bit down versus what we saw at the end of 2020. And as you'll see later, that's a typical pattern that we see. As you can imagine, during the holidays with new devices coming online, people being home, Historically, December, the end of the fourth quarter, has traditionally been the highest month throughout the year, and then usage tends to settle back in during the first quarter. And that, again, that seasonality, that trend seems to be taking hold again here in 2021. Now, when we look at, again, that reduction versus the fourth quarter in usage, we're comparing here what happened with flat rate or unlimited operators versus those that have usage-based billing in place. And as you could see, those with usage-based billing, actually their usage decreased even more than flat rate billing providers. We attribute that to many operators re-implementing their usage quotas, post pandemic, and most of them at this point have reinstituted quotas on a per tier basis, and that again has had a pretty significant impact at the power levels, which would drag down the average usage. So as a result, we see more of a usage decline here in the first quarter for usage-based billing than we do for the flat rate billing operators. Median usage is one of those things that we continue to track as well. And, if in the average usage category, we saw roughly a 15% increase in usage from the first quarter of 2020. It's always interesting to look at median usage and the fact that that grows at a faster rate than average usage. Again, telling us that usage is increasing across the board for most subscribers. It's not just a scenario where the top power users are pulling up the average. 24% increase year over year in the median usage category.
Thank you, Mark. Now, power users is our next topic of discussion, or subscribers who consume 1 terabyte or more of data per month have a profound impact on the network, as Mark has mentioned. The power user category has seen tremendous growth in the past few quarters. Let's take a closer look and see how the changes in power users' usage created an overall impact.
Yeah, so if we look specifically at these two categories, what we would call power users, and then really the extreme super power users, those that use over 2 terabytes. Again, we've seen a bit of a decrease from what we saw at the end of 2020 in the fourth quarter. However, when you look at the growth versus first quarter of 2020, it remains very, very high. So those consuming over 1 terabyte actually represent 24% more subscribers in that category here in 2021 than we saw in 2020. And on the super power category, we're looking at 56% more subscribers that are over that 2 terabyte level than we saw back at the same period of 2020. So while the decrease is a little deceiving from the fourth quarter to the first quarter, if we look year over year, we continue to see power users growing at a pretty rapid rate. Now, again, when we isolate usage-based billing and the characteristics of those power users versus the unlimited flat rate billing operators, this is where the difference in billing schemes really starts to stand out in terms of usage behavior. We see a pretty significant reduction in the percentage of power users when usage quotas are in place. And for those of you familiar with usage-based billing, you'll know that many operators do actually start their quotas at 1 terabyte or less. So it makes sense that subscribers that perhaps are real power users would prefer to be on the service of an unlimited operator's network. And we're going to talk more about usage-based billing versus flat rate billing, but certainly in these power user categories, this is the one category I think that's most impacted by the type of billing scenario that operators have put in place, and that makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Mark. Now, returning to the theme that we've talked about a few times, while the seasonality trend appears to have returned in the first quarter, usage is still elevated compared to pre-pandemic levels. Now let's get into the numbers that prove that out. Back to Mark.
Yeah, so as we said up front again, you see that traditionally from the fourth quarter to the first quarter of the following year, usage has tended to decrease or at most, pretty much be neutral when we look at a February or a December usage versus, end of first quarter usage. However, you saw in 2020 that changed for obvious reasons, right? With the lockdowns, with people being at home, et cetera, really caused, quite a difference than previous years. That seems to be coming back to what we call normal, I guess, normal seasonality now. And obviously, this is something we're going to be tracking here as we move throughout the year. The first quarter, but traditionally has tended to be slightly down or, pretty neutral with what we've seen in the fourth quarter. So we'll keep an eye on that, but we expect normal seasonality really this year. Now, I think sometimes it's important, we're talking about percentages and we're talking about, year over year. We're talking about bigger denominators every year, right? When we do these calculations of growth rates. So this kind of looks at over a 2-year period, just looking at the growth and average usage, power users, upstream and median usage. Significant, right? So when we're looking at growth over a 2-year period, and you think about the fact that this is average, and we have to remember, broadband has been pretty successful in adding subscribers as well. So when you consider the fact that we're talking about average usage plus more subscribers, the actual impact on these operator networks is even greater than these percentages. You're looking at, as much as double the amount of traffic that has to be supported now than just 2 years ago. So it puts a lot of strain on the networks. It's really important for the providers to understand these trends, be able to forecast usage. I'm going to highlight that third category down there, upstream usage. While this is something we pointed out, I think, on a previous OVBI, and I see that a question came in about this as well. We have seen that upstream usage has continued to grow, even when we've seen, we just talked about seasonality and how overall usage might have come down versus what we saw at the end of the fourth quarter. On the upstream side, it just continues to grow. And now it's a smaller percentage of the total usage, obviously. The vast majority of the 460 plus gigabytes of usage, roughly 430 of that is actually downstream usage. But upstream is now over 30 gigabytes per household, and it continues to grow. And that is, for many operators, more of a capacity challenge that they have to deal with. And certainly, different types of applications now have become very popular. Obviously, Zoom and Teams and those types of calls, video calls, gaming, et cetera, has contributed to the upstream usage. So this is another category that we've started to break out and analyze as its own category. And we expect that to continue as well. Even when we're now seeing, these hybrid back to work environments, we have not seen upstream usage dissipate in any way. Now, this is what we talked about earlier, historically, and you can see over many quarters, we've looked at those operators, the average usage being lower that offer usage-based billing. And, again, it makes sense. They're putting quotas on these plans. Subscribers are changing their usage behavior. The power users are oftentimes selecting the unlimited operators, those operators offering unlimited plans, and that brings up the average usage of those customers. Now, those same customers can be the ones causing network issues. So, we're seeing that delta and that behavior is even more pronounced now than we've ever seen before. As operators have put back in place usage quotas, it has had a pretty profound impact on usage behavior. And we see subscribers really curtailing their usage as compared to what we see in a flat rate billing. scenario. So we're going to, again, continue to track this, but it's pretty clear and has been for a number of years now that there's just less usage when it comes to the billing based on the billing scheme. So just a few implications here. We have seen a bit of decline in the power users since the fourth quarter, and that has had an impact on really bringing down overall usage. So that's one of the implications that we've seen. Although, again, I'd like to highlight that the power users are still dramatically higher than what we saw even a year ago at this time. So now, as we've talked about a few times, we're definitely seeing a delta between the usage-based billing operators and flat rate billing operators, particularly at those power user levels. When you have quotas in place, it really helps to protect your network. It helps to keep those real tremendous power users from migrating to your network or causing issues on your network. And you see the deltas there at both those terabyte and 2 terabyte levels. So again, usage did decline, although that was mostly on the downstream side. We've seen upstream that grew throughout the year of 2020, which again is not a surprise based on the new types of applications and services being used by consumers. It did not, unlike downstream, it did not actually get reduced here in the first quarter. We expect to see upstream continue to grow throughout this year as well. Median usage, again, when we look at, it's important to look at both average and median, and that's really because of that power user category. We want to understand, is it the entire customer base that's using more? And that has implications that we're going to talk about when it comes to revenue opportunities and ARPU drivers for operators, because it's not just a few subscribers causing this growth. It's actually the entire user base changing their behavior, and that's never been more obvious than this past year.
Thank you, Mark. This brings us to our second poll, and this is another poll about your concerns. So let's launch poll number 2. Here it comes. Based on the numbers you've seen just now, such as the 15% more data consumption on average year over year, and as a provider or someone who studies providers, what level of concern does this give you regarding the impact on network performance and subscriber satisfaction? There's a healthy, somewhat concerned overall, about half the folks here, and then another straight out, I am concerned. 2 people aren't concerned at all. Let me, okay, so that brings us now to the next section as we continue on speeds, and back to Mark.
Yeah, so we've seen historically a very strong correlation between the speeds being offered and the usage per subscriber. And that's both within a carrier's environment, within an operator's environment where they're offering 4 or 5, 6 different speed tiers. We track usage at every speed tier, and it's consistently shows that as speeds increase, usage also increases. And part of the reason for that is, obviously the households that need the faster speeds, their usage tends to be higher for that reason. But we also see things like Netflix's adaptive bit rate serving up different quality if the speeds are there and available. And so, there's lots of reasons for it, but it's pretty clear. It's highly correlated. So the one that we focus on of late, of course, are those operators that are out there offering a gig service and the adoption rate. Now, we all know that subscribers can't even use a full gig speed at this point, but operators are spending a lot of time and effort trying to promote the gig service. They've built out their networks to be able to provide these speeds. They're promoting it, and they're being very successful to the point of, almost 10% of subscribers now are provisioned here at the end of Q1 at the gig speed level. And that's up 261% since last year at this time. So the pandemic has certainly caused, again, changes in usage behavior, the need for faster speeds, and that's playing itself out in what customers are selecting. We're going to talk more about that, though, when it comes to ARPU opportunities, because while that's the case, there are still a lot of low-hanging fruit subscribers that have yet to make that leap to the faster speeds. That presents opportunities for operators, and we'll dive into that as well. Just as we see at the high end and the faster speeds a greater adoption, we're seeing less of an adoption at the lower end, the speed tiers that aren't, that they might be considered broadband, but oftentimes now many operators are even starting to offer their lowest speed tier being at 100 megabits per second or higher to new subscribers. So we're seeing a decline in those subscribers that are provisioned in that 50 meg category, and certainly even at slower speeds, a reduction. So just as we talk about, what's the definition of broadband? The FCC defines it as 25 megabits per second. Right now, we're seeing roughly 90% of the millions of subscribers that we track actually receive speeds at more than 2 times that already. In fact, 80% of our subscriber base is actually provisioned at 100 meg per second or higher that we see. So I think that, certainly there's a lot of initiative to get the minimum of 25 at least out to all rural areas and everything. For those operators that already have networks in place and based on the homes passed, we're seeing much higher speeds than the way the FCC currently defines it. So just again, some of the implications, when it comes to usage-based billing, and this makes a lot of sense if you really think about it. Many usage-based billing operators that are offering those types of pricing scenarios offer higher quotas with faster speeds. And it gives a lot of incentive to subscribers to upgrade to those faster speeds, because not only do they get the speed and the increased speed, but they get the higher quota as well. And there's a significant difference in the adoption, therefore, of those higher ARPU, higher speed tiers on a usage-based billing provider versus a flat rate billing provider. And that has massive ARPU impacts that we'll talk about. So part of the reason for this very low adoption of the slower speeds is many operators, at least in the States, have done away with even offering some of these low speeds. So again, as I mentioned, a lot of these speeds, the minimum speed is 100 megabits per second. Okay, so just in this is something again we started showing I guess a few quarters ago. What's the average household look like? And what we're seeing here is, we talked about 460 something gigabytes on average per household, but the breakdown is 432 of downstream and 30 gig of upstream. Again, it might not seem like upstream is that important, but it's impactful because it's noticeable to the user, number one, and there's many times less capacity on the upstream side that challenges operators, drives phone calls, results in truck rolls, etc. So paying attention to upstream is really, really important. You see how the average speed has really continued to go up over time to now we're looking at 207 as a weighted average downstream speed and 16 megabits per second on the upstream side. On average, we're seeing the average number of streaming services remains around 4. And there are different sources for this information. So I want to be clear, in the past, when it comes to that very bottom right picture of 25 devices per household, there are some sources that say the number is 10. There are some that say it's as high as 25. So this time around, we used a different source there. But just really showing that the proliferation of devices, internet-connected devices, continues to explode inside the home. And every holiday season, as I mentioned before, we see an uptick in the number and type of devices that are connected and higher quality, et cetera. All those things contribute to the increase in usage that we see. So just in some conclusions here before we get to the ARPU spotlight, as we have come out of this pandemic and continue to come out of it, I think we're reverting to seasonality that we've seen in the past, although it's at those elevated levels, and we expect that to really continue. I don't think anybody really projects a complete reduction in usage back to pre-pandemic levels. That's just not going to happen. So again, this is really the seasonality point. We saw the slight reduction from Q4 into Q1. This is something that we'll continue to track here throughout the year. Yeah, I mean, I think that operators did a great job and really hustled to maintain their network at a time when the network was strained in an unprecedented way. Usage, we're talking about literally, as I mentioned, almost twice as much usage that has to be supported since just 2019. All of a sudden, really, that accelerated in 2020, and operators were faced with dealing with this. They did a fantastic job, but I think that what has become very obvious is the need to really understand these trends, the need to be able to forecast and predict what's going to happen. Now, obviously, nobody could predict the pandemic, but it's really important that the operators have the tools in place where they're at least able to do the deep dive analytics and leverage that analytics to make smart business decisions. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that again when it comes to ARPU generation. And lastly, and we've talked about this, I mean, the power usage did decline a little bit from fourth quarter to the end of the first quarter here. And that certainly was more pronounced with those operators that have quotas in place, a much bigger decline in usage among power users as they re-implemented those quotas that they had relaxed during 2020. Yeah, the other trend here is that when operators have quotas in place, it actually results in subscribers self-selecting to move up to these faster speed tiers and right-size themselves, whether it be, again, because they need or want the higher speed, but oftentimes it's because maybe they're starting to bump up against their quota and they don't want to be hit with overage fees. So in their minds, it's a better deal to actually upgrade, get the higher speed with a much higher, typically a much higher quota. So they don't even have to think about their usage levels. So it does result in faster speeds, typically with the usage-based billing operators. We're going to talk about the other implications of that here in a minute. And again, it's just really important that operators have these tools in place to be able to understand what's going on, both in terms of network performance, as well as subscriber satisfaction. A detailed, granular understanding of subscriber usage behavior is the best way to provide the best service really to each subscriber, and arming customer care, marketing, and sales with that information as well.
Thank you, Mark. And this takes us to our third and final poll. Before we jump on it, one question did come in. Just wanted to answer quickly about, hey, is this information available to us? And the answer is yes. If you go to our site, openvault.com, you could download the hard copy from all the data that you see in this report is available in the PDF of the report of the OVBI. So just go to our website, you'll be able to download it. And this presentation itself, the webinar, will be posted as a recorded presentation as well. So you can come back and enjoy this. whenever you'd like. Which takes us to poll number 3. So building on the levels of concerns we talked about, want to go a little bit closer, multiple choice here. Pick the ones that apply based on the issues we've seen and the challenges you're faced with. Which are the most critical you're trying to address in the next 12 months? Select all that apply. Reducing network congestion, improving customer satisfaction and net promoter score, basically reducing churn, and finding ways to increase ARPU. What are the most critical? By the way, while you're voting, another question did come up about the jump in connected devices. Why did it go from 10.37 to 25? Mark talked about we go to various sources. One of the sources that we used is a report that came out yesterday by Deloitte, and you could Google that yourself. And they attribute it specifically to the pandemic. More and more people in due to lockdown and working from home, more and more connected devices is how they attribute it. Well, kind of even across the board, though overwhelmingly improving customer satisfaction, NPS, as well as reducing churn. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about that. Now, hold on tight. In response to some of the feedback we've received in prior OVBIs, we want to show you specific ways you can monetize the growth of your usage on your networks. How? Well, let's turn it back over to Mark to jump in.
All right, thanks, Larry. Yeah, so I want to talk about the fact that there are many attributes in a subscriber's usage behavior that can indicate the need to upgrade to faster speeds. So we call that bandwidth right sizing, and we have a few different things here I want to share that our customers have employed to drive ARPU, to increase their average revenue per unit. And one of those is, again, right sizing. And what you're seeing here is a picture of one of our tools that is highlighting the fact that you've got many customers still, let's say, on 20 megabits per second, if you see over here on the left. And what the tool does is it maps those subscribers to different usage categories over on the right. It might be a little hard to see, but you're seeing, subscribers on 20 megabits per second using 500 gig to a terabyte or 1 to 2 terabytes, et cetera. We see this all the time where, especially during the pandemic, usage behaviors have changed. Many subscribers, when they signed up for service, they signed up years ago. They haven't changed their level of service yet. As they've increased the devices, the quality of devices, as their household usage behavior has changed, the fact that now during lockdowns, we had simultaneous video streams going, a much bigger reliance on upstream. Again, the quality, many people went out and got higher quality devices because they knew they were going to be at home, and that impacts the amount of data consumed. The fact is, many subscribers just need more bandwidth than they have. It's those same subscribers that are oftentimes calling into customer care. Trucks are being rolled out with field techs to try to fix the problem. In reality, these customers just need more bandwidth. So based on all the different operators we work with, we're seeing on average 20 to 30% of subscribers under provisioned. Now, when you look at that and you look at the fact that the average price delta to go from one plan to the next is in the $12 to $15 range. And by the way, that's, there's a big range there, right? Some operators have a $5 difference. Some have as many as a $20 difference from plan to plan. An upgrade means revenue opportunity. And it's not just what we identify initially. Again, as median usage increases, everybody's usage is increasing. So you might upgrade all those 20 to 30% of customers this next month or this next quarter, but the fact is others will fill in behind them as their usage behavior changes, and they will become upgrade candidates. So it's really, really helpful to identify who those are, to be able to run targeted upgrade campaigns. And we estimate, based on what we've experienced with our customers, is that you can drive a $4 to $5 more ARPU, higher ARPU by the end of the first year of really focusing on this particular initiative. Right sizing subscribers is absolutely a huge opportunity, and it's low-hanging fruit, frankly, for operators. It's just a matter of really, diving into the data and understanding how to analyze it. So that's one way. The next, not every operator, I understand, is comfortable moving towards usage-based billing, but I just want to share the experience of one customer that we observed and analyzed. They deployed, it's going back a couple of years now, but they deployed usage-based billing. Small operator of roughly 30,000 subscribers. They spent about 90 days educating their subscribers that this was coming, notifying them of their usage versus the quota that was established, et cetera. What ended up happening was truly amazing. Many subscribers volunteered actually to upgrade their service when they saw the quotas. They saw that they were going to be approaching them. They got the benefit of the higher speed and a higher quota by upgrading. This operator ended up driving over $7, almost $8 of incremental ARPU within 1 year of deployment. The vast majority of that came from upgrades, not actual overage fees. The overage fees was actually a very small piece of that, subscribers going over their quota. Subscribers that were impacted actually upgraded to the rate of about 40%. 40% of those subscribers that would be impacted by those quotas decided to upgrade their plan. Now, the result was that net promoter scores actually increased. And there's a lot of misnomers when it comes to usage-based billing. A lot of groups, talk about usage caps and all. These aren't caps. Most operators will set their quotas so that just the very top of the top. You see there only 2.5% of subscribers were impacted by these overage fees. This operator sent great messaging out there to let people know that 97%, 98% of them were not going to be impacted by these overage fees, by these quotas. The result was many of these subscribers that actually upgraded ended up happier because now they're getting the bandwidth that they actually truly need. Again, there's so many under-provisioned subscribers that if you can help them, drive them to those faster speeds, you're going to end up providing a better service. There's a high correlation between those under-provisioned subscribers and phone call volume and truck roll volume in an operator's environment. A lot of it is nothing to do with the network. The network could be healthy. It's simply the pipe going into the home isn't big enough. And so that's another, I think, a really important case study to share around usage-based billing. Now, again, not every operator is comfortable with deploying usage-based billing. So that's why, the right sizing campaigns, and we're going to go to the next slide, Larry, another deep dive analytics approach that we take, and we term this clipping. Our clipping reports really looks at, instead of just volume, usage volume, speed is a function of usage over time, right? Megabits per second. Well, every operator is provisioned for a certain speed. What we're able to look at here at a pretty granular level is to take usage over a period of time and figure out how much of that provision speed did that subscriber actually use. And when they're approaching their speed limit, it tells us they're an upgrade candidate. They simply don't have a big enough pipe going into their home. So examining both a combination of what they're provisioned for and how much of that provision speed is actually being used has become a really popular analysis that we do for our customers. And to arm customer care with this information is really critical because, again, it's those same customers bumping up against their provision speed that are the ones calling in on, a Friday night when they've got people over for a movie night or there's online gaming going on and their internet's slow. Well, again, there's nothing wrong necessarily with the network. And a lot of operators, the default answer of customer care is, well, we're going to roll a truck and send a field tech out to you. Well, two things. One, by the time that appointment gets scheduled, there's no longer an issue because they're coming out when it's not peak time. And number two, again, it likely has nothing to do with the health of the network. If customer care was armed with the fact that, okay, it's simply the pipe going into the home isn't big enough. It's not fast. They're not providing fast enough speed for that customer's needs. So being able to identify this and do this kind of a deep dive analysis prevents a tremendous opportunity to not only drive revenues, but reduce truck rolls, reduce call volumes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of operational metrics of an operator get improved when you're able to look at it at this level. So that would be really a third way of being able to drive ARPU, but again, it has expense reduction implications as well. So in conclusion, we're firm believers, because we've seen it time and time again with all the operators we work with. There's a lot of money being left on the table. And remember, demand is not slowing down. It's growing. It's continuing to grow. It's really important for operators to align that growing demand with growing revenues. Analytics is where it starts. I mean, being able to identify these upgrade candidates based on various types of usage attributes, behaviors, number of devices in their home, et cetera, it can really help drive ARPU, and implement upgrade campaigns, et cetera. And lastly, what we've seen, and we've seen operators, again, whether it's usage-based billing versus flat rate billing, we've seen many operators offer different types of these different billing scenarios, et cetera. The happiest customers are those that actually, where there's a focus on the upgrades, usage-based billing, where subscribers are self-selecting to right-size themselves. It's become amazing, the delta in both usage behavior, but also net promoter scores, the customer satisfaction, et cetera, as well as churn prevention tool. So, these are some of the things we'd like to highlight, as we talk through these different operator initiatives. Lastly, just to, I think everybody on the call, this is a very operator heavy webinar compared to many of these that we've done. So we saw that in the registration. So we want to make sure that those of you that are on the call that are operators know that, this is what we do for a living. Obviously, we live and breathe broadband usage analytics. We're happy to provide all of you that are interested with a 30-day audit on our dime, just to really help you understand where your opportunities lie, where your revenue opportunities are, where your network health issues might be, correlating that all that information together. We typically will take about 30 days where we're tied in with our cloud-based approach. It's not a heavy lift for an operator to get this deployed. We're happy to do that as an offer to our attendees here.
And I'll just add, Mark, if you are interested in this special offer, you can just let us know through the Q&A, or just send an email to sales@openvault.com, just if you want to act now.
Yeah, so just in final conclusion here, before we get to Q&A, we are focused 100% on network health and revenue generation. You're seeing here just a snapshot of our solutions. I won't go through all these, but you get the picture of all the different things that we do. I think the next slide is what's most important and unique, is that our solutions tend to be really adopted across the organization. So we become a really trusted source of the data and the analytics. So we might, obviously we need to work with engineering to get this thing launched. Although again, it's pretty straightforward and simple. But once the rest of the organization gets wind of having all this data and these analytics, it tends to, migrate to other functional groups as well, to where the whole organization can benefit from looking at the same data set and the same set of analysis.
Thank you, Mark. Again, before we jump into Q&A, if you haven't gotten the report, go to our website, openvault.com, and download our OVBI to get all the information we've just shared, though without some of the commentary you've gotten here. And if that's what you want, then come back in a few days or check our social media. Please follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and you will find when this is posted and you can watch it again. And again, if you're interested in our offer, just shoot us an email. Which takes us now to Q&A. We got several questions coming in, about 7 or so. We have about 5 minutes, so let's just bang out a few of them. Couple quick ones. The provision speed chart that we showed earlier. Question: is that just new subscribers, or is that all subscribers?
That's all subscribers. We're talking about over 4 million subscribers or so that are used to come up with that pie chart, explaining the different levels of provision speeds. Yeah, so that's everybody.
Thank you. Another quick one. Have you guys ever looked at busy hour usage?
Yeah, for sure. We tend to see a slightly higher rate of peak time usage than we do overall usage. You know, when we just count up gigabytes in totality, those are the numbers you see here. But we do track at the hourly level, so we're able to really look at what the peak curve looks like. And one of the things that we saw, you know, just to focus in on upstream for a sec, as we've talked about, you know, the upstream curve is pretty flat. You know, we used to see peak time at, you know, 5 to 9 p.m. or thereabouts on the upstream side. Now, upstream peak time really starts at about 11 a.m. and it's a pretty flat line throughout the rest of the day. So it's amazing when you do look at it at the hourly level. But the answer is yes. We do track that. We can look at that at the hourly level to help see really, because obviously that's how operators are designing their networks, right? Is to support those peak hours. We understand that.
Okay, thank you. Now, going to the solution, this is more about that. What's the typical ROI? How long does it take to realize that?
Well, our business model is software as a service. So our modules that we provide are on a per subscriber per month basis. So it's a very low cost of entry, low barrier to entry from a economics standpoint. So typically the ROI is immediate. You know, it doesn't take many upgrades, for instance, when we're helping identify upgrade candidates to easily pay for our solution. So ROI tends to be immediate from month one. And continues, and it's just a very high ROI set of solutions.
Thank you. Next question. Thanks for the glimpse into your tool set. Am I able to isolate UBB and FRB subscribers and then market to them differently?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, most of our operator customers have deployed usage-based billing across their customer base, including new customers. However, we do have some that have grandfathered existing subscribers and deployed usage-based billing just for new subscribers coming on. And so, yeah, we can analyze at the package plan level. You know, that's what we do. So certainly the answer is yes to that question.
Okay. Another question about the tool set. We're pretty resource constrained. What's the process to get this deployed?
Yeah, good question. Our solution is fully cloud-based. 99% of our customers use the cloud-based solution. Some operators prefer an on-premises solution. But regardless, it's a very straightforward process. It's a matter of providing typically the information an engineer or two needs to point the data to our cloud instance, where we take over everything from there. So we've had customers fully deployed in a day, easy, with a single engineer working with us. So this is not a heavy lift. It's not one of those major IT or engineering projects that needs to get scheduled. It's a very quick solution set to deploy with, again, pretty immediate ROI.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions. Since I can see historical as well as real-time usage by subscriber, as you've described it, and since you guys are so good at predicting, a little attitude there, I think, can I forecast usage behavior and proactively take action?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it takes, obviously, in order to do a forecast, you need a little bit of a history, right, to be able to look at the trend. But the good thing is we've got many operators we work with today. So, you know, a common question we might get is, we're going to bump everybody up from 50 meg to 100 meg service. You know, can you tell us what to expect from, you know, in terms of usage? Even if we haven't worked with that operator that long, chances are we've worked with another operator that's done that same thing, and we're able to share, obviously, in a sanitized way. We never share our customer names of the data that we're specifically using, but we can use the history and the experiences to help operators predict what's going to happen on their network. Another example of that is one of the things that we've shown on previous OVBIs is cord cutting analysis and the impacts of cord cutting in terms of what usage to expect post cord cutter, how their usage behavior changes, and also how it changes leading up to the cord cutting event, so that you could actually predict cord cutters. So yes, the answer is yes. We could certainly help with predictive analytics.
Thank you. And the last question. On your last OVBI, you predicted 2021 would end with usage between 600 and 650 gigabytes average usage. Are you still feeling that way?
I am. We're seeing close to 500 gigabytes now per household, and historical trends have shown 20 to 30% growth rate. So assuming we continue, as we've stated now, with the new seasonality that's going to reflect previous years, I expect that we will see that kind of growth continue. So really 2020 just had the effect of elevating everything. And now if previous trends hold true, which we expect they will for various reasons, we talked about devices, we talked about quality, et cetera. We expect usage to fall into that 600 to 650 gigabyte category, probably by December of 2021.
All right, Mark, thank you very much. Sounds like it's a good time to be in the broadband business. Everybody, thanks for this opportunity to present to you our key findings, implications that we see for you and for the industry, and some of the ways that you can monetize this growth. Thanks very much. Again, check out our website for more information and when this is available if you want to share it with others who aren't able to make it. Thanks very much. Have a great day.